All right, welcome. Welcome to our first book review on We Share a Book and a Bite. I'm the W in We. I'm Patty Wagner. And this is Sheryl Erickson, the E in We. Our first book review is of Little Comfort by Edwin Hill. And Edwin Hill is going to be joining us in our book discussion. We have a book discussion next week via Zoom, because of course these are interesting times for us right now. And he's going to be joining us and talking about sort of his writing experience and his book. I'll put a link below to how you can register for that, so you can join us. Come on in and meet Edwin and talk a little bit about the book. Even if you haven't had a chance to read the book, join us, please, because I think he'll give a lot of insight into his process too, and I'm excited about that. So Sheryl and I decided that we would do this. We would review these books, and we will not talk about them ahead of time. So we haven't talked about them, even though we almost did. I almost started talking about it to Sheryl. So we haven't talked about it ahead of time. So I'm going to actually ask Sheryl what she thought of it first, and then I'm going to jump in. So Sheryl, what did you think of Little Comfort?
Well, first I have to talk about my food.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead. Yes.
Because it's a book and a bite, and the book will consume most of the talk. But I was going to make the little crabbies, but I don't like crab meat, and I was going to substitute for something. But again, since we're kind of stuck inside, I didn't really have anything. So I made some mac and cheese. And you see I'm serving it in a leftover container because I just think that's what Hester would have had, because she didn't do dishes. And it takes place in the very, very cold of winter. So my hot cocoa is still good for Little Comfort. But the book, okay. You had told our listeners and viewers in our introduction that you love the mystery book. And this is actually, I think, the third book maybe in our Coffee and Crime series. Mm-hmm. The first two, which Sheryl did not enjoy. She tried really, really hard, but I just did not enjoy them. So it's like, okay. And being stuck inside, I'm reading this on my phone. So I'll say I felt like it took me a little while to get into it. But when I got to the discovery of a body, I was hooked.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, read. I couldn't read it fast enough. So I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was great too. And I would say the same thing. I think it was almost, I can't remember exactly how many pages in it was, maybe almost 100 pages in when they found the body. Forget, it was the end of a chapter. Normally, I have to say, normally my books, when I'm reading them for book club, look like this. I've got, marks all over them where I read something and it sticks out, or I want to make sure I point something out. This is what my Little Comfort book looks like. Nothing, because I was reading so fast. So, yeah, and I had actually started this book a little while normally than I would before a book club meeting. But I wanted to get this done. Sheryl and I had talked about doing this conversation too, but then I sort of couldn't stop. So I liked the book a lot too. I thought it was really good. And I liked how many characters he had in there. I didn't fall in love with any of the characters, which normally sort of bothers me about a book, but it didn't, because the plot was my big thing that I held onto. And I didn't have the characters pegged either. So there were certain things. Like my favorite character, I would say, is Waffles, the dog, honestly, that's just me. But, like certain characters really made me mad. For example, like Morgan, Hester's boyfriend, Morgan, it's like, dude, come on, so certain things, I felt like shaking certain characters, but I thought it was really good. And I thought it was well written, and I would read the next Hester Thursby mystery, definitely. So I thought there were a lot of good things in there. And I thought one of the things that I really enjoyed was Hester trying to figure out how to be a parent and feeling very alone during that time period, because I think all parents feel that way. So I feel like there was some sort of understanding of her, that kind of character, part of her character that we can all relate to, is that you just always feel like you're doing it wrong. I think I forget exactly when, but she said something that was, like I'm just awful at this. I'm just awful at this. And I just had this visual too of her and Kate and Waffles the dog walking around, like her, this little person walking around. And it was just this comic relief during this sort of important part as she's approaching these different characters that you're like, that person is dangerous. And she's just walking around with Waffles the dog and Kate in hand. I thought that was sort of funny too.
That knowing that it's a crime book, I mean, that there's some kind of, somebody's done some bad deeds in here. I was like you, it's like, when are we going to get to the crime? But I think all of the characters, and to me, there's just the right amount of characters.
I would agree.
There's enough people that there's some complexity, but not too many that you can't keep them straight. And I think that it took those first pages to really kind of get you interested in those. And you said you didn't really just love anybody, but you didn't really hate anyone either, probably.
Yeah. And I would say too, like I found Sam and Gabe really interesting because as we started, and I think maybe you felt the same way because of a couple texts we had back and forth, that we would just say, where we were in the book and everything, but we didn't really talk about the book. But for example, like I started off thinking Gabe was super creepy and Sam might have been a little, he might have been the sane one in the relationship, honestly, between the friendship, I should say. And yet slowly this whole thing just starts turning. And I found that really interesting. And I liked that. I don't know, I'm sure Edwin did that purposefully, but that is exactly how it hit me was you thought you sort of had these people channeled and suddenly it just goes, ooh, as you go through.
And it was like, I think that part of that exposition was that even though we hadn't got to somebody being murdered or whatever, they all of those characters had something to hide. Mm-hmm. There was something inside them or something that had happened in their lives that they were kind of hiding. And so there was that mystery about, okay, I'm introducing you to these characters, but you don't really know everything about them yet. So
yeah, and you don't know what they're hiding. You don't know why they're hiding it. So are they hiding it because they are the ones who, committed this murder? Or are they hiding it for a different reason? And you find, obviously, as you go through the book, the answers, but it's sort of that initial wondering. I would also say this too, is that I thought the book length was absolutely perfect. Well done on the book length, because it was about 336 pages in this type of, writing. So I think for a mystery, it was really good. I've liked longer books before, of course, too. Sheryl said her favorite one on the last one was a longer book. I love The Other Boleyn Girl, fantastic book, which was a thick one too. But I love books about this length or a little bit shorter too, that you can enjoy, you can really get into, and then you can move on to your next story because there's so many stories that are good. Good to read.
Well, 786 pages on an iPhone.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. On an iPhone, it's a little bit longer.
But you can read them. You can read a page of an iPhone pretty quick.
Okay. And so one thing that I wanted to ask you about, Sheryl, was the postcards. I loved the idea of the postcards, but I was struggling with, and this is what I love to talk to Sheryl about when I'm not sure about something and she comes in with a great idea. I was struggling with why, I could see why he would send postcards to try to, I think everyone was holding on to relationships that weren't necessarily exactly healthy relationships. They still wanted that relationship in their life. Why movies? Did it matter? Was there a reason?
So Hester could figure it out.
Yeah.
She was such of a movie buff. I don't know that, and maybe I wasn't exactly sure about the age, not the age of the people, but the time period
of the book.
Yeah, it felt fairly modern, but yet some of the kinds of things kind of felt a little throwback. I mean, obviously they were using cell phones and doing internet searches and stuff to try to find things. So there were some aspects of it that seemed fairly modern, but then some that didn't quite seem so modern. And maybe that was because of some of the, I mean, the main story takes place in Boston, but then there's also some kind of rural areas. And so maybe that was part of why.
Yeah, I read a review, or I read the edwinhill.com, he did write that he was writing this book, and I forget if he said he started it around 2010. I forget the exact date, but as he was writing it, he had to keep updating it based on the technology that became available. So I think it was released in 2018, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But I think he was constantly having to change certain things, which I find interesting. And then on edwinhill.com too, just for everyone who's listening out there, because one thing this book really asked in my head was, who would you cast for this? Who would you cast for this? Who would you cast for this? And so Edwin Hill gives his lineup of who he would cast, but the one person he left out was the one that I wanted to know more than anything in his film, was Sam. Who would he cast for Sam? Sheryl, did you come up with anyone who you would cast for Sam?
I didn't think about that as I was going through, although I did think it would make a movie.
Yeah.
I didn't really put, actors or characters to it yet. But now that I say that, someone pops into my mind who can't do it because he's dead, and that's Heath Ledger.
Yeah. He would be good. He would have been good too.
Bad guy, good guy. He can, yeah.
And he's got that sort of, yeah. And in all fairness, Edwin Hill picked a couple, I think, dead people too. So yeah, that would be good. He would be good. Yeah. He would be good. Yeah, and I usually, I love when a book hasn't been made out into a movie yet, and you can read it, because then you can, you physically sort of picture people. And sometimes I remember I was reading a book and they had already cast the movie, and I happened upon that. And the whole time I was reading a book where the casting didn't match, like who they had cast and who I was picturing in my head didn't match. And I found that sort of distracting. So I love it when you can sort of invent. Hester, I don't know, because she's so short. He didn't start off talking about how short she was, so it sort of surprised me when that became she's 4'11". I was like, no, not in my head. Not in my head. She's not 4'11" in my head. And it was still something I sort of struggled with a couple times, during the book. Every once in a while, it was brought up, and I was like, okay, that's right. She's small, but not in my head. Not in my.
Yeah, so. No, because she's larger than life in many ways. So
yeah.
There was something that you said about. I suppose my main character, or maybe my favorite character, was Kate, the little girl, 3 years old. Again, I'm an elementary school teacher background, and then it also be. You talked about the connections with the movies, but that kind of made me jump back to the book we read for our last Friends book discussion, Diane Evans' Ordinary People, where there was music that was a thread that kept coming through. And so there, I don't, I think maybe those kinds of things like that an author does really helps you connect and relate to, if you know that movie or you don't know that movie. Do I need what I need to know that adds
a little depth.
Song. Yeah. So and back to the postcards again, kind of an old-fashioned twist to it. But also maybe, I'm out here. You need to be aware of me, person that I'm sending these to, so maybe yet it's hard to find. You can't track me down based off of a postcard.
Yeah, so maybe I was thinking that it was like a connection, like he didn't want to let go of that relationship. But what you're saying, which I sort of like, because it adds to it goes along with the creepiness of Sam, is sort of I'm out here type of a little tap on the shoulder. Yeah. Ooh, I like that one better.
Definitely wants to be known and noticed, but yet he's also hiding.
Yeah. And I mean, he did some of the movies he Yeah, yeah. Ooh, I like that too. I like that one better. I loved that idea, and maybe to me it was a sweet idea, and so I put it in the cat in that category. But I like yours a lot better, and it seems to fit better with the Sam character too. So very interesting. I like that one a lot. I like that one a lot. Yeah, there's so many relationships here where you've got two people, whether it's Wendy and Felicia, or Sam and Gabe, or Hester and Morgan, or Daphne and Kate, where you like one of them and I don't like the other one, or there's some sort of like these pairings where I'm like, okay, Hester, I like you. Morgan, you need to get it together type of a thing. Or, Wendy and Felicia too. Like as lost as Wendy was, she really saw Felicia as her true friend, and Felicia just was mad all the time at Wendy and saw her as, it was a weird dynamic, I thought, but good.
Some of these pairings, they needed to work on their communication.
They needed to work on their communication very much. So,
but again, that sets up a tension. I want to keep reading what's going to happen between these two, between then these other outer groups too. They just, like I said, there was just enough characters to make it really interesting and not enough to be confusing.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. I will say too, I agree with Sheryl as far as it really, I was in from the beginning, but it did grab me when the body was found. But it also grabbed me, I was totally creeped out when Gabe showed up at Hester's house. This was early in the book. It might have even been before the body was found. I can't remember, or right afterwards. It was within like 20 pages of the body being found or something. Showing up and going inside her house while she was asleep. And that just freaked me out totally. And that's where, of course, you're sort of like, oh my God, this Gabe is like off the tracks. And then, of course, you've got that shift where he still obviously has issues, but he sort of,
old.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you understand why, but that scene really, oh my gosh, that really creeped me out. And I was like, do I have a key hidden outside? Okay, if I do, I got to move it. And, we went through everything.
I thought about, okay, where's my safety key? Oh, no one will ever find that.
Yeah, I know. Gabe might. So yeah, but very, very good. Okay. So anything else you want to bring up about this, or should we give it our star number out of 5 stars?
Well, I have already, since you said, there's a sequel, another one. A sequel. I mean, there's another story about Hester. She is the main character, and I have already put it on hold on my Sunflower e-library. So I'm ready to read some more Edwin Hill.
Yeah, and I should say too that I knew that this was the first, so I knew that Hester was going to live. Because otherwise, I swear, I would have thought she was going to die at some part of this. So I was sure that Hester was going to live. I thought, though, towards the end, Sheryl, did you have the same reaction? I thought that Gabe was going to go kill himself for a second. Okay, yeah. So I thought the same thing. And I thought, I actually, as sad as this sounds, I was like, maybe that's his escape. This poor guy, maybe that's his way of just being done with it. So I was glad to see he didn't do that. But it was, I was surprised at that turn a little bit later on too.
And I'll just hopefully people are really wanting to read this, that some of the kind of redeeming things, everyone had something that was probably better kind of kept out of the way, but everyone really had some sort of a reason or some bit of good in them.
Well, other than Sheryl and Bobby. So, and there.
Well, that's true.
Or a couple.
Sheryl, that was Sheryl with a C, not an F.
Sheryl, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they were pretty self-centered.
Yeah, and I would read the second book too. So it kept me going. I read it quickly. It was the right length. It was a good book. I would recommend it to someone. And I think, and honestly, I started off thinking it was going to be more like I don't know how to put it, not as much of like a thriller mystery, but more of like a a calmer sort of tea mystery or whatever. And so I was surprised, and I was happily surprised that it had an edge to it, because the edgy ones usually keep me going faster. Because you are wondering what's going to happen to Waffles the dog and Hester and everyone else.
Again, the characters are created in such a way that they're pretty believable. I mean, I don't think I know very many people like any of them. I hope I don't, but I think they're out there.
Yeah, and that was it too. Is I was like, oh, this is like really a corner that hopefully I don't run into.
Right.
So that's always good. But yeah, I'd give it like 4.5 or 5 stars, because I enjoyed it. I liked it. I would read the second one. And that's what books are to me, is an escape and a joy. So I'd give it a 5.
I think if a 5 means someone else should, that I highly recommend other people reading it, and especially since I haven't been into the kind of crime books that we've read in the past, I would say yes, this is certainly to me in that genre, it is a 5. I give it a 5.
So we recommend picking it up, and we recommend coming to meet Edwin Hill too on in our Zoom meeting on I think it's the 29th. It's on Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday the 29th at 2 p.m. So you can sign up through Winfield Public Library's calendar. I'll put a link below. And again, you don't have to read the book if you don't want to in order to show up. If you want to read the book, it's available via ebook too. And you can visit WPL.org in order to find out how to do that. So, but yeah, so thanks so much for joining us for our first review on We Share a Book and a Bite. And our next book, I think we talked about it earlier. I'm going to hold it up one more time, is Children of the Stars. So if you want to get hold of this book, either through the Kansas State Library or Sunflower, or order it if you want a copy for your own library, then go ahead and grab it. And we're going to read this one, and we're not going to talk about it at all, I promise, other than just maybe a couple quick texts that just say, oh, I'm at a good part, or whatever. And then we'll get back together and we'll review this. So if you have any comments about Little Comfort, put them below too, because we'd love to hear what you have to say about it.
So Patty and Sheryl ask, what are you reading?
All right, Sheryl, way to go. Yay, woo! Yes, I love